The royal castle stands majestically under the bright sunlight. The queen gazes intently into the magic mirror. On the magic mirror, as the queen searches for answers, the queen's reflection is seen more clearly in the mirror. The queen continues to seek insight from the magic mirror. Inside the queen's chamber, the evil queen gazes into her magic mirror. The magic mirror reflects the queen's image, hinting at the darkness within. A subtle shift in the mirror reveals the queen's inner malevolence. The queen's chamber, filled with an unsettling stillness, the evil queen remains before the mirror, lost in her dark thoughts. The queen gazes into an ornate mirror, her reflection cold and regal. Queen. Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Mirror, you, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White is fairer than you. The reveals the queen's face contorts with fury. The queen is enraged by the mirror's revelation. A young Snow White wanders through the sun-dappled forest, gathering flowers. On Snow White's hands, as she gently picks a vibrant bloom, Snow White pauses, gazing up at the towering trees with a sense of wonder. Sunlight filters through the leaves, creating a halo effect around Snow White's head. Snow White smiles, clutching the bouquet of flowers to her chest. The queen sits on her throne, her expression unreadable. A huntsman stands nervously before the queen. Queen, take Snow White into the forest. Kill her. Bring me back her heart as proof. The huntsman bows his head, accepting the queen's horrifying order. On the queen's face, a hint of triumph in her eyes. The huntsman leads Snow White into the forest. Deeper into the dark forest, the huntsman hesitates. The huntsman draws his dagger. The huntsman looks into Snow White's pleading eyes, his resolve faltering. The huntsman's resolve crumbles. The huntsman, filled with guilt, kneels before Snow White in the forest. The huntsman confesses the queen's evil plan, urging Snow White to flee. Snow White, terrified, flees into the forest. The dense forest conceals Snow White. Snow White disappears into the wilderness, leaving the huntsman alone. Snow White, lost and exhausted, wanders through the darkening forest. The dense trees cast long, eerie shadows. Snow White's weary footsteps echo in the silent forest. The forest's silence deepens Snow White's fear. Lost and alone, Snow White seeks a path through the darkening woods. Snow White discovers a quaint cottage nestled among the trees. Snow White hesitantly approaches the cottage, seeking shelter. The cottage stands as a beacon of hope amidst the darkening woods. Snow White reaches the cottage door, her hand outstretched. The interior of the cottage remains a mystery as Snow White prepares to enter. Snow White cautiously enters the dwarf's cottage. She is determined to clean the cottage. She hopes to earn the favor of whoever lives here. The interior of the cottage is in disarray. 7 small beds are scattered haphazardly around the room. The 7 dwarfs march towards their mine, singing. On the dwarfs, as they approach the mine entrance, the dwarfs disappear into the mine. View of the mine entrance after the dwarfs have entered. The mine stands silent. Deep within the mine, the dwarfs diligently mine for gems. The sound of pickaxes echoes, filling the cavern with rhythmic clangs. Amidst the labor, camaraderie shines as the dwarfs joke and chat. Their voices bounce off the rock walls, creating a symphony of labor and laughter. Dust motes dance in the beams of their helmet lamps, a testament to their hard work. The dwarfs return home, weary from their day's work. Arriving at their cottage, they notice something is amiss. The familiar disarray has vanished, replaced by an unexpected neatness. Cautiously, they push open the cottage door. An eerie silence hangs in the air as they step inside. Snow White awakens in a small bed, surrounded by 7 curious dwarfs. Snow White, I don't understand. Where am I? Who are you? Snow White recounts her story of the evil queen, the huntsman, and her escape into the forest. Dwarf 2, you can stay here with us if you like. Snow White, oh, I would be happy to. Thank you all so much. Inside the dwarf's cottage, Snow White happily cooks and cleans. Laughter and warmth fill the dwarf's cottage, creating a sense of family. Snow White organizes the dwarfs' belongings. The dwarfs gather around Snow White. The cottage radiates love and harmony. The queen stands before her magic mirror, a frown marring her face. Queen, mirror, Mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Mirror, Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is the fairest of them all. The queen's rage intensifies on the queen's face, now distorted by fury. Inside the queen's laboratory, the queen stands over a cauldron. The queen cackles wickedly as she prepares a poisoned apple. Dark magic crackles around her fingertips as she infuses the apple. The poisoned apple is ready. The queen smiles, satisfied with her creation. In the forest, the queen, disguised as an old peddler woman, heads towards the dwarf's cottage. Reveals the queen's eyes gleaming with malice. The queen continues her approach to the dwarf's cottage. The dwarf's cottage comes into full view, unaware of the danger approaching. The queen pauses just outside the dwarf's cottage, a sinister smile creeping across her face. Snow White opens the cottage door to find an old woman with a tempting apple. The old woman extends a shiny red apple towards Snow White. Old woman, my dear, won't you take a bite of this delicious apple? Snow White hesitates, her eyes fixed on the offered apple. On the apple, glistening enticingly in the sunlight. Inside the dwarf's cottage, Snow White succumbs to the poisoned apple. Snow White collapses onto the floor. Snow White lies motionless on the floor. The poisoned apple rests beside Snow White. A single tear rolls down Snow White's cheek. Forest animals sense danger and rush towards the mine. The animals approach the mine entrance, their agitation growing. Birds fly frantically around the mine, adding to the chaos. On a rabbit's fearful eyes as it stares towards the mine. The forest animals collectively try to alert the dwarfs working inside the mine. The dwarfs return to their cottage, shadows lengthening as evening falls. Inside the cottage, the dwarfs halt, discovering Snow White motionless on the floor. A collective gasp fills the cottage as the dwarfs rush towards Snow White. Grief washes over the dwarfs as they gather around Snow White. The small cottage is filled with the dwarfs' sorrowful silence. The dwarfs gather around Snow White in their cottage, concern etched on their faces. They desperately try to revive Snow White, but their efforts are in vain. A somber realization dawns on the dwarfs. Snow White lies still, seemingly beyond help. The dwarfs are unable to break the powerful spell. In a sun-dappled forest clearing, the dwarfs meticulously construct a coffin of glass. They gently lay Snow White into the glass coffin. The dwarfs arrange a soft bed of wildflowers around Snow White. The dwarfs stand vigil, their faces etched with grief. They gaze upon her still form. A handsome prince rides through the dense forest. The prince enters a clearing, the sunlight revealing a hidden glade. The prince is captivated by Snow White's beauty. Snow White stands in the clearing, unaware of the prince's presence. The prince stands frozen, completely smitten by Snow White. The prince approaches the glass coffin in the forest clearing. The prince is captivated by Snow White's serene appearance. The prince kneels beside the glass coffin. The prince gently kisses Snow White. A wide view of the forest clearing, highlighting the glass coffin and the prince. In a forest clearing, Snow White awakens, the spell broken by the prince's kiss. Snow White's eyes flutter open as she begins to stir. Sitting up, Snow White is alive and well, surrounded by the beauty of the forest. The prince looks at Snow White with relief and love. The forest witnesses Snow White's miraculous revival. Snow White and the prince meet in a forest clearing, sharing a profound connection. A palpable sense of love fills the air. The dwarfs celebrate the miraculous moment. The forest clearing erupts in cheers, a moment of pure joy and celebration. Inside the queen's chamber, the queen stands before her ornate magic mirror. Queen, mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? The queen's chamber reflects her growing horror as the mirror speaks. Mirror, Snow White, with the prince by her side, is the fairest of them all. The queen's face contorts with dark intent as she realizes her scheme has failed. The queen clutches her chest, betraying the envy and hatred. The queen stares at the mirror, plotting her next move. Snow White and the prince bid a tender farewell to the dwarfs in the forest. Promises of frequent visits fill the air as they prepare to depart. Snow White and the prince mount their horses, ready for their journey. Riding towards the setting sun, they head towards the prince's kingdom. Their figures grow smaller as they disappear into the horizon. Snow White and the prince arrive at the prince's magnificent castle. Servants cheer and celebrate their arrival. Snow White and the prince are greeted at the castle entrance. The royal couple shares a loving glance amidst the celebration. The prince leads Snow White into the castle. The castle ballroom shines as Snow White and the prince share a loving dance. Elegantly dressed guests fill the ballroom, celebrating amidst laughter and music. Snow White and the prince's movements are graceful and full of love. The grand ball is a vibrant celebration of Snow White and the prince's union. The air is filled with laughter and music as the celebration continues. The evil queen, disguised, arrives at the castle ballroom amidst a lively celebration. The evil queen attempts to blend in with the revelers, but her disguise is imperfect. A guard notices something amiss. The guard recognizes the evil queen despite her disguise. Tension rises as the guard prepares to take action. The evil queen stands defeated, silhouetted against the midday sun. Guards escort the evil queen towards the rampart's edge. A crowd gathers below, a mixture of relief and lingering fear on their faces. The air is thick with the scent of victory and the promise of peace on the evil queen's muddied and torn regal robes. Snow White and the prince exchange vows in the sunlit castle gardens. Sunlight glints off the snow, creating a magical atmosphere. The kingdom prospers under their kind and loving rule. Their reign brings prosperity and joy to all, a lasting image of love and unity.